guys. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be sharing the typical day in the life, like on my inpatient rotation. It's very different from the one that I did at intern year because the hospital is different, located more at a rural site. So as a result of that, there's just a different flow, just I guess with any hospital. Every hospital has their own flow. So yeah, so there was a lot of learning curve. There was a huge learning curve there, but this is the way that it's generally set up. So in the morning, you come in and you get sign out, which is the same at, everywhere. Then after you get the sign out, you distribute patients amongst the different hospitalists, because we were working with a hospitalist team. And after that, you have ICU rounds shortly after. So you have some time to see all the patients, develop your plan that you want to do for the day, and then you have ICU rounds. ICU rounds involves everyone that is like the entire team. So that includes the nurses, social workers, the charge nurses, pharmacists, the doctors. So everyone's together and discussing each patient and determining what we need to do for the day. So the entire team is on the same page. Then we execute. So then after that, a little bit later on, you have the general floor rounds. So the general floor rounds is this exact same setup where you have like a meeting with like every single person that's on the team together for the entire floor. So it's like an entire group of people that are together. Basically every nutritionist, every single person involved in patient care and a member of the team is there, and we go through what the plan is for the day. And then you have the remainder of the day to go through, make sure everything's being taken care of, and you continue to monitor patient progress, and you make sure that the patient is doing well. And if anything comes up throughout the day, then you manage that. The way that this hospital does it is that they have like the team of hospitalists, and then admissions are like basically round robin. Then you pick up any admissions that come through the emergency department, and that may require hospitalization. Because we're in a rural hospital, there's another element to that. So not only do you have to think about like, okay, does this patient require hospital level care, so you admit, you also have to think about, do we have the resources to appropriately manage this patient? So if the patient requires advanced level of care for resources that we don't have, we would have to call the main hospital and see if we could transfer them over. And for that, you have the different transportation. So there's a video that I did with East Care Helicopter. So they are part of the team of people that pick up emergent cases from around the region. So if a person needs to be transported, you get either transported by ground transport or by helicopter, depending on the severity of the situation. So that's generally how the typical day is set up. My perspective, like comparing intern year to second year, I think there's some major differences that are important to take into consideration when you are, let's say, like after residency, if you want to practice and you're like, I want to do hospitalist. There are big differences in the setup and the resources available between a small rural hospital and like a university affiliated hospital. And what I mean by that is that a small rural hospital is where I'm located because I'm in the rural tract. So they don't necessarily have all the resources, as I mentioned earlier. So as a result of that, you're going to have to manage the patients, and you have to really know your medicine very well to be able to manage very, very wide range of care. And you may not have specialists available at your beck and call, versus at a hospitalist, you can consult a specialist and they typically see the patient within the day or within like 24 hours, generally, depending on the service and the capacity. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but generally, all like most of the time, that's usually what it is, within 24 hours. However, that is not the case at a rural hospital, so you have to really know your medicine well, even all the subspecialty stuff, because you may be taking care of that patient and making sure that the patient stays stabilized until a specialist can get there. At my hospital, at least, there is the feasibility where we can conference in or like call for assistance, or like, and then just, get information that way. So you're not completely left on your own because we are affiliated with the larger system. But that's something that is is worth bearing in mind, because you may not want to do that, or you feel more comfortable having specialists available and more resources in that sense. So that's a big difference. The other difference from as a resident's perspective is that this time we're working with the hospitalists. So like obviously all the hospitalists were great. I learned a lot from them, and they were fantastic teachers. But I just, as a resident, like I think I just miss being around other residents. And I think a big part of that is probably just because our program is quite new, and so we just don't have the same number of residents, so we're not, constantly engaging in them. And I think being in a rural hospital and being in an unopposed program, you don't have really any residents that you really frequently run into from other specialties, which I had an intern year, and it was very nice. And so I think that's like the biggest thing that I miss. From a learning perspective, I feel that I had better learning experience because there weren't any other residents there. So I really had the opportunity to do a lot of things that I normally wouldn't get to. What I mean by that is, for instance, I got to do a lot of intubations and procedures that I wouldn't have access, or I wouldn't be first in line, let's say, to get to do at the larger hospital, because there are residents from those programs that would need to have those numbers more. So as a family medicine resident, I wouldn't necessarily be first in line. Also because you have fellows and you have other residents. So let's say if you have to do an intubation in the ICU, typically, from my experience, it's usually done by the fellows, because they need to make sure that they're proficient, so they get first hit at the priorities and making sure that they get everything that they need to get in order to be proficient at what they do. That same goes for paracentesis or thoracentesis, all the procedures, because there are certain criteria that you need to have in order to graduate. I think in that sense, because there's no fellows and there's no other residents, for someone that enjoys procedures, it was great for me. Our hospitalists were really, our attendings were fantastic, and like if you expressed that it was not particularly your interest and you already had the numbers that you needed to graduate, it wasn't an expectation, but it's nice to know that you have the capacity to do it should you wish to do so. So that was the biggest thing. I think, that's the only con. It's just that I miss the other residents. Okay, so it's Sunday today, so I'm taking you guys along on a typical day in inpatient. I guess it's not really a typical day, but this is a Sunday. I haven't really had a chance to film essentially this entire block because it's been so crazy, but I'm going to try my best to film tomorrow because I'm going to be switching over to night shift soon. So I want to at least show you guys what a general day as a hospitalist in a rural hospital is like. Typically we have sign out at 7, so we got sign out right now. It's like about 8:10. So I'm just reading up on my ICU patients, and then I'm just going to talk about them and make the plan for today with my attending, and then gonna see the rest of the floor patients. And then we typically on regular days have multidisciplinary rounds around 11 where we discuss what's gonna happen with each patient, and then we have the rest of the day for admissions and consults, whoever comes into the ED. So yeah, I'll keep you guys along. It's just easier to film today because there's not anyone really here, so like in terms of other staff members and whatever, so it's just easier to film a little bit. I'll try to take you guys through a general day tomorrow, but yeah, at least you'll get to see what we do. All right. Also, I think that I get to do a procedure today, perhaps a thoracentesis. So I'm really looking forward to that because it's going to really help the patient, obviously, but also it'll be a great way to practice the ultrasound skills that I just got trained on. So yeah, looking forward to that. All right. Catch you guys soon. Okay, this has been filmed over like an entire week because it's been so difficult to film all at one time. So I'm gonna stop by a wound clinic in a Husky, see a few patients there, and I'll touch base with you guys a little later. Don't mind my hair, it looks like shit. Anyways, here today on wound clinic, just gonna I stop by in between patients. Yeah. So far, the usual setup of the day is that we come in around like 7, and then we have sign out from the nocturnist, for example, for today, because we had a new hospitalist team because they're usually on 7 on, 7 off. Today, the hospitalist it was a different group of hospitalists that came in than there were this past week, so we had to divide up all the patients again. I got to keep the same patients I had just for continuity of care, and I already knew them. But yeah, all the hospitalists have divided up all their patients, and the first thing that we do is that we have ICU rounds around 8:15. Couldn't really film in there because the ICU is obviously like very small, you know, unlike the ICU in Greenville. Like actually even in the ICU in Greenville, I barely filmed inside of it because you just really couldn't. There's just too much going on, and it's very easy to have a HIPAA violation, and it's not good patient care because it's just very serious. So didn't film in there, but we typically have ICU rounds around 8:15. So that's like across like with all the nurses, care managers, and everybody, and the doctors, the entire team together, and we discuss the plan that we're going to do. Sorry. And then we see all our patients on the floor. We have multidisciplinary rounds at 11. So all the people that are involved in the care for the patient, that includes the social worker, PT, OT, the nurses, the doctors, everyone meets at like around 11. And that's when we discuss like dispo and things that we need to have done for today and what the overall plan is, so that the entire team is all on the same page. And that's usually the structure, and then we take admissions throughout the day. But anyways, aside from that, yeah, like surround's a little different. I think like the biggest difference is the fact that like we don't have, like you're not really on a team, you know, like the way you are in residency, you're not really on a team. We have our attending. So we're with the hospitalist. However the hospitalist wants to, and like however you guys decide is best, we split the patients. So for example, let's say like today, the team of hospitalists started their 7 days on. So we'd have the entire census, and then we have 3 hospitalists on for the daytime, and then they would split it amongst themselves. Now, because I'm here and I've been here like for 4 weeks, they've been trying to keep the learning consistent and try to keep continuity of care by letting me keep the patients that I have. Whatever hospitalist I'm assigned with will have my patients in addition to whatever the allotted amount that they're supposed to have. You also get admissions from overnight based on where you are in terms of the docket. So they kind of do admissions in a round robin kind of way, where like for like one person gets in, second person, third person. So it's not like there's not one admitting hospitalist. They all like switch it up. That way it's more fair and no one gets burnt out, hopefully. Yeah, that's usually the setup. And then we also cover ICU. ICU at my small community hospital is not quite the same as the big house, just because we don't have the same degree of resources, so we can't handle the same acuity as an ICU at the main hospital that I was at last year. But it's still pretty intense. We still have to do vet management, intubations, and things like that. And but we can't do bronchoscopy and stuff because we don't really have like subspecialties here, so we don't have like intensivists, like designated intensivists or designated pulmonologists or designated cardiologists that are in-house at all time. It really like varies, and they come. And I think that's like part of just being part of the rural, like part of being in the rural hospital. You just don't have the same degree of access. So that kind of is good in a way. Like it's good for learning because then you are really able to, how do I say this, like, so you're essentially really forced to make sure that you know your medicine really well and make sure you know as much as you can, like, know, because it's like it's on you, and you have to make sure that you do right by the patient and do the right thing. So you have, your knowledge base has to be pretty strong, and you have to be resourceful and figure out how to keep a patient stable when you may or may not have everything that you would in a larger center. So that's one of the things. So I got a little sidetracked, but yeah, so like I said, we have ICU rounds at 8:15. So we try to see all of the patients in the ICU first, and then we see the patients on the floor, and then multidisciplinary rounds are at 11 o'clock. So we have a collaborative effort with everybody on the team, and we just go through the plan and the disposition for each patient. And then you have the rest of the day to work on your notes, do whatever procedures that may come up, and see whatever admissions that might be coming through the emergency department. And then we sign out to the nocturnist at 7 p.m. So At minimum, it's 12 hours. Like, I think the past couple of days I've actually been leaving at like 8:30, but there's a reason for that, and I can't say I'm like complaining because I've really enjoyed it because I actually really like procedures. So yesterday I got to do multiple procedures. So then as a result of that, I ended up being late because I had to catch up on all my documentation. Each procedure ends up meaning like another note. So yesterday I got to do an intubation, a thoracentesis, central line, and I attempted an arterial line. Then today I got to do a couple more intubations, but those were not like, they were in the OR, so it wasn't like an emergent situations, but I got my numbers in, and it was nice getting to intubate in a non-emergent situation where the patient's not actively coding. Takes some of the pressure off versus one of the other times where I had to do an intubation, the patient was actively coding. So as you can imagine, there's immense pressure, and I think I'm gonna make a video about that, like thoughts about being in a coding room, in a room with a coding patient, I would say. So yeah, let's go take a little tour around the hospital. So I think you may have seen it on my emergency medicine vlog, but let's just take a look. I think it'll be less chaotic right now, so I think I'll be able to like show it a little bit better. Okay, bye. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think that this video may be a little different from my previous videos. It's also much harder to film in the hospital when it's a rural hospital, primarily because when you're making YouTube videos, you need to make sure that you comply with HIPAA and there's no patient information that is inadvertently given away, and also just you don't want to get people on camera that may not want to be. So that's why it's been a little bit harder to film as much as I did at the larger hospital. But I'm going to be trying my best. If not, I'm going to be transitioning to making just mini vlogs on my other socials. We'll see how it goes. Just giving you guys a little heads up. If you have enjoyed these videos, please follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and then there's even more stuff from the day to day. All right, well, thank you very much, and bye.